At first glance, Mohammed Mrabet's short story, The Woman from New York, seems pretty straightforward. A classic tale of a house guest who just really overstays her welcome. But if we dig just a little deeper, we find it's this incredibly powerful and provocative story about culture, power, and what post-colonial Morocco was all about. The story kicks off with this really simple line. An American woman came from New York to Tangier on a visit. I mean, it's quiet, it's unassuming, but that one little sentence, it's our doorway into a hugely complicated cultural collision. So, which is it? Is this really just about a visitor with some bad manners? Or is Mrabet showing us something way bigger, a really powerful and revealing clash between two completely different worlds? To really get what's happening, we first need to meet the main players and kind of set the stage, which is the unique cultural crossroads of post-colonial Tangier. So we've got three key people in this little drama. First, there's the American woman. She's the guest who shows up and just throws everything into chaos. Then you have the Englishman. He's the homeowner, but he's super passive. He kind of just watches it all happen. And finally, there's Rifi, the Moroccan associate who very quickly becomes the story's moral compass. What starts out as a simple offer to drive someone home, well, it spirals out of control fast. The tension in the story really builds around these small but super significant cultural clashes that show a massive gap in values. And here is the first major awkward moment. The woman invites Rifi up to her hotel room and tries to kiss him. But he immediately shuts it down. Not because he dislikes her, but because of custom, because of tradition. Right away, you can see their wires are completely crossed. And that one moment really reveals these two opposing worldviews that are at the heart of the whole conflict. On one side, you've got Rifi. His world is built on a framework of tradition, moral purity, and Islamic ethics. And on the other side, you have the woman, who, at least to him, represents this kind of rootless, arrogant modernity that's only guided by individual desire. Well, the tension just keeps ratcheting up, moving from social norms to a direct moral attack. Rifi delivers this incredibly powerful line, and he turns the whole idea of cleanliness into a metaphor for spiritual and moral superiority. He's not just talking about soap and water here. He's claiming the higher moral ground based on his faith and his customs. Okay, so the story seems to be setting up this clear conflict, but is it really about who's right and who's wrong? Or is the story asking us to look at who gets to have the power to make that judgment in the first place? Now, to really understand the story's depth, we need to look at it through a specific analytical framework. We need to put on a post-colonial lens, so to speak. And trust me, applying this lens changes everything. The key concept we need to grasp is something called a post-colonial reversal. It's this really clever device where the story just flips the expected power dynamic on its head. So instead of the Westerner judging the local, the Moroccan character, Rifi, becomes the moral authority who gets to judge and critique the Westerners. And here's the crucial takeaway. This story isn't just about three people who can't get along. No way. Through this post-colonial lens, we see it for what it is, a powerful critique of Western culture, its perceived flaws, its decadence, its arrogance, all told from the perspective of someone who has historically been on the receiving end of its power. Okay, so now that we're armed with this idea of a post-colonial reversal, let's jump back into the story and start decoding some of the key symbols Mrabet is using. The characters themselves basically become symbols, right? The American woman comes to embody Western decadence, a sort of moral confusion. The Englishman represents that passive, almost complicit nature of the old colonial presence. He just stands by and lets it all happen. And Rifi? He stands for Moroccan dignity and authentic cultural values. And it's not just the people. Even everyday actions are loaded with meaning. Like we saw, cleanliness becomes a huge metaphor for moral purity. And food, wow, food becomes a major cultural battleground. Rifi is a good cook. He's connected to his culture. The woman's attempts at cooking, they're a disaster, symbolizing her complete ignorance and disconnect from the local world. So all of this is building to the story's climax, which really acts as a kind of final moral and cultural verdict delivered by the narrator. And the turning point? It's a fish, a spoiled fish. The woman's cultural incompetence, her inability to even buy fresh food in a market, leads to the literal poisoning of the Englishman. Her presence has become physically toxic, which is an incredibly powerful symbol of her negative influence.
And the consequences come down, and they come down hard. She is formally expelled from the entire country. This isn't just El Rafiki kicking her out of the house. This is the state itself rejecting her. The narrative delivers its final judgment. Her whole way of being is just incompatible with this place.
So let's pull all this together. What are the big takeaways here? Well, we've seen how the story just masterfully inverts that typical colonial narrative. It places all the moral authority in the hands of the Moroccan character, El Rifi. The Westerners are shown to be decadent and passive, and the woman's final expulsion feels like a powerful form of cultural and moral payback. You see, in The Woman from New York, Mohammed Mrabet reclaims the power to write the ending from his own perspective. And that leaves us with one last, big question to think about in all our cultural encounters. When values clash, who ultimately gets to tell the story?